At exactly 2:17 a.m., the archivist noticed something wrong with the paper. Not the words, not the ink, the paper itself. It was too thick, too carefully cut, and it smelled faintly of old iron and smoke, like something that had been kept near fire for a long time. The receipt was dated April 11th, 1893. It listed a transaction made in rural Missouri, written in perfect copperplate handwriting. One family of 6, paid in full. There was no item price, no goods listed, just names, a mother, a father, for children, and at the bottom, a signature that did not appear anywhere else in the historical record. E. H. Calder. No bank, no church ledger, no census document. But the archivist found 27 more receipts like it, scattered across orphanage files, church donation logs, and county storage rooms across 5 states. Each one recorded the same thing: families being purchased and then erased. No death certificates, no relocation records, no graves. They simply vanished. The archivist would later say this: "It felt like I was holding proof of something America decided to forget on purpose." 3 weeks after discovering the receipts, the archivist resigned. 6 months later, their apartment was found empty. No note, no signs of struggle, just one object left on the kitchen table. A single receipt, dated 1901, with only one line written across it. "This one was mine." No photograph of Elias Harlan Calder has ever been confirmed. That alone is strange. Men who donated money in the late 1800s left trails. Churches named wings after them. Towns carved their names into stone. Even criminals left mugshots. Calder left nothing, except money. Between 1879 and 1904, anonymous payments appeared across the Midwest and Northeast. Large ones, too large to ignore. Always paid in gold-backed notes or bearer bonds. Always delivered by hand. The recipients were always the same kinds of places: orphanages, church-run boarding schools, asylums for wayward families, company towns where workers lived in dead-owned houses. And every time the payment arrived, something else happened. A family disappeared from the records. Not expelled, not transferred, simply removed. Church baptism logs crossed out names in careful ink. Census pages had whole lines scraped away. Orphanage intake books showed children checked out, but never checked back in. Local papers never reported reunions. No rescued family stories. No praise, just silence. In one Ohio church, a priest wrote a private letter in 1891 that was never meant to be found. It was discovered sealed behind a wall during renovations. It read, "The man does not ask questions. He does not threaten. He only pays and expects obedience. I fear he believes he is correcting something ancient." The priest was transferred 2 weeks later. No reason given. The letter ends with a sentence written so lightly, it almost disappears into the paper. God forgive us if he is right. Not every institution accepted Calder's money, and those places share something unsettling in common. In 1886, a Lutheran orphanage in Minnesota refused an anonymous offer to release 8 children whose parents were still alive but institutionalized. 2 months later, the orphanage burned down. The fire was ruled accidental, but witnesses reported something odd. No screams, no panic, just doors standing open, as if everyone had already left. In Pennsylvania, a coal company town rejected Calder's payment to clear the debts of 6 families bound to company housing. Within a year, the mine collapsed. Official cause: gas buildup. But survivors said the tunnels had been quiet that day. Too quiet. No warning sounds. No shaking. Just a sudden, heavy dark. And in Georgia, a church-run boarding school returned Calder's money with a letter stating, "Families belong to the order God has assigned." That school closed within 3 years. No records explain why. Only a rumor passed down locally, that the children were taken away at night, and no one ever saw them again. Historians argue coincidence, but the pattern is difficult to ignore. When Calder paid, families vanished into freedom. When he was refused, places collapsed, slowly, quietly, like something withdrawing its support, as if the buildings themselves were standing on borrowed time. For decades, nothing more was known, until oral histories surfaced. In the 1930s, Works Progress Administration interviewers recorded stories from elderly Americans. Most were about farm life, wars, hardship, but a handful were different. One woman in Kansas, age 82, was asked why her family suddenly moved west as children. She said, "We didn't move. We were released." When pressed, she became agitated. She described a tall man who never sat down, who never removed his gloves, who spoke gently but never smiled. She remembered one thing clearly. He told my mother, "You have been owned long enough." Another interview, recorded in Maine, was sealed for decades. A former orphan recalled being taken at night with other children. No wagons, no guards, just a man waiting near the tree. He paid the matron without counting the money. Then he said something the child never forgot. No institution survives the truth of what it does. The interview cuts off abruptly. The rest of the tape is blank. Not erased, just silent. The first trace of E.H. Calder should not exist. It appears in a Massachusetts shipping ledger dated 1812, nearly 70 years before the receipts found in the Midwest. The handwriting is identical. The ink formulation matches. The signature is the same. But the age is wrong. The entry is brief, almost casual. Private payment received. Cargo released. No inspection requested. There is no description of the cargo. But written in the margin, in a different hand, is a note added later. Families. Historians tried to dismiss this as coincidence. A reused name. A clerical error. Until the same signature appeared again. In 1849, in a church donation book in upstate New York. In 1863, on a handwritten bond used to clear farm debts in Illinois. In 1877, attached to a sealed envelope delivered to a Catholic seminary in Maryland. Each time, the handwriting never aged. No tremor. No stylistic change. No evolution. As if the hand holding the pen had never grown older. A theology professor who reviewed the documents wrote privately, "Either this is a lineage intentionally mimicking itself, or we are dealing with something that does not move through time as we do." The professor died before publishing the paper. Heart failure. Sudden. Unremarkable. To understand Calder, you have to understand what churches never preached publicly. In the 1800s, many American religious institutions operated under an unspoken belief that families could be morally owned. Debt, sin, poverty, waywardness. These were treated as chains passed from parent to child. Orphanages weren't just shelters. They were filters. Boarding schools weren't just educational. They were containment. Breaking a family unit was considered mercy. Keeping them together was considered dangerous. In seminary lecture notes from the 1850s, never intended for public reading, there is a recurring phrase: the inherited burden. Children were believed to carry the moral failures of their parents in their blood. The solution was separation. Calder opposed this belief violently, but never publicly. He never wrote pamphlets, never preached, never debated. He did something far more unsettling. He treated institutions exactly as they treated people, as assets, as things that could be bought, emptied, and discarded. A pastor in Indiana wrote in his diary, "The man speaks of churches the way we speak of souls, as something that can be redeemed or abandoned." There is one account, only one, where Calder spoke at length. It comes from a letter written by a schoolmaster in Vermont in 1898. The schoolmaster had refused Calder's money. He describes a late-night visit. No threats, no raised voice, just conversation. Calder reportedly said, "America inherited an old sickness and renamed it virtue." He spoke of Europe, of bloodlines, of land passed down like a curse. Then he said something that terrified the schoolmaster. When families are broken long enough, people forget they were ever whole. The schoolmaster asked who Calder was. Calder answered, "Someone who remembers before this country learned how to hide its hunger." The letter ends abruptly. The schoolmaster never mailed it. It was found years later in his desk. He was discovered in the same room, seated upright, eyes open. Cause of death, stroke. The physician noted something unusual. No signs of struggle, but extreme stress indicators, as if the man had realized something irreversible moments before dying. Not all families freed by Calder told their stories. Most refused interviews. Others pretended nothing happened. But a pattern emerged. Their children often developed a strange habit. They hated contracts. They avoided debt at all costs. They reacted strongly to authority figures who spoke of order and structure. Many became drifters, not because they were lost, but because they refused to be contained again. One descendant said this: "Whatever he didn't just move us. He broke something that was trying to claim us." Several families passed down a warning. Always whispered. Never explained. If a man ever offers to buy you, make sure he means to let you go. Calder did not vanish suddenly. He withdrew. After 1904, no more payments appear. No receipts. No letters. No sealed envelopes. But something else begins happening. Institutions once emptied by Calder began to close. Churches lost attendance. Orphanages lost funding. Company towns dissolved. It was as if removing the families had removed the purpose. In 1907, a clerk in Missouri recorded the final known sighting. A man matching Calder's description stood at a train platform. No luggage. No ticket. When asked where he was going, he reportedly said, "Home." The clerk asked where that was. Calder smiled, the only recorded instance of him doing so, and replied, "Where ownership doesn't reach." The train arrived. Witnesses say Calder stepped forward. But when the doors opened, he was gone. Calder was not patient. That's important. People who plan carefully over decades usually move slowly. Calder did not. His actions sped up near the end, payments arriving closer together, sometimes weeks apart instead of years. It felt like urgency, as if he believed time was running out. In a private ledger found in a burned-down seminary in Kentucky, a strange phrase appears repeatedly beside Calder's name. Before the consolidation, no explanation is given, but church correspondence from the same period hints at something unsettling. Religious leaders spoke of a coming, necessary unification, a tightening of control, a belief that scattered families were dangerous to moral order. One bishop wrote, "The country grows restless. We must gather what wanders." Calder seemed to understand this instinct deeply. In one receipt margin, written in faint pencil, he added a single sentence. "They are preparing cages and calling them homes." Historians argue this was metaphor, but survivors say Calder spoke as if something physical was approaching, something large, slow, and inevitable. Not a law, not a movement, a structure. In 1902, Calder made his final known purchase. It was an orphanage in western New York. The building still stands today. No fire, no collapse, but no children either. Local legend claims the orphanage was emptied overnight. No wagons, no goodbyes. When inspectors arrived weeks later, they noted something disturbing. The beds were neatly made, the floor scrubbed, the kitchen stocked, as if whoever left did so calmly, deliberately. On the head matron's desk sat an envelope. Inside was more money than the orphanage had ever seen, and a note. "They will not be processed again." No signatures, no explanation. The matron resigned the same day. She never spoke publicly, but her niece later recalled something she whispered years later while dying. He said if they stayed, they would forget they were human. Until now, Calder has sounded confident, certain, controlled. But one document suggests something else. A journal fragment found in a Massachusetts estate sale, and signed, but unmistakably his handwriting. It is short, uneven, written as if the hand trembled. "I am not freeing them forever, only long enough to remember themselves." Then, lower on the page, "What is coming does not need chains. It only needs consent." This changes everything. Calder may not have believed he was stopping something, only delaying it, teaching families how to resist ownership before it learned new names. Debt, obligation, salvation, care. He understood that control evolves, that cages learn to look like protection. The final confirmed Calder document appears in 1905. Not a receipt, a letter. It was never mailed. It was found folded inside a family Bible passed down through generations. The letter reads, "If this reaches you, then I failed to return." That does not mean the work ended. It means it learned how to hide. He urges the reader to watch institutions that speak softly while tightening rules, to fear any system that claims families are dangerous when left alone. The last line is underlined twice. Freedom is easiest to steal when people are told it is for their own good. There is no signature, just a pressed leaf tucked inside the page. Old, brittle, not native to America. After Calder disappeared, something strange happened. Institutions didn't weaken. They adapted. Orphanages changed names. Church schools rebranded as care academies. Company towns became community housing. The language softened. The control did not. Records show a sharp rise, after 1910, in children being separated for reasons that sounded benevolent. Improper upbringing, moral instability, protective placement. Families weren't sold anymore. They were managed. A A social worker manual from 1912 contains a chilling line. Attachment to family can interfere with proper development. Calder's methods were no longer needed. The system learned how to do it itself. Calder's disappearance did not go unnoticed. Private correspondence between church leaders reveals quiet panic. One letter from 1908 reads, "If he has gone underground, we must ensure he stays there." Another is more direct. The idea spreads faster than the man. There were attempts to find him. Not by police, not by journalists, by committees, unmarked groups operating under charitable fronts, traveling inspectors asking about a man who paid in silence and left families whole. They never found him, but several of those men later resigned abruptly. One reportedly said, "I don't think he's hiding. I think he stepped out of reach." Descendants of Calder-freed families developed rituals. Nothing formal, just habits. They avoided long-term contracts. They taught children their full names early. They kept family stories alive, even painful ones. One woman said, "He didn't just free my grandparents. He taught them to notice the moment freedom starts being negotiated." Many of these families became oddly resistant to propaganda, moral panic, mass movements. Not rebellious, just unmoved, as if something inside them refused to be absorbed. There is an idea historians rarely say out loud. What if Calder wasn't human in the way we mean it? Not supernatural, just older. Some believe he belonged to a forgotten order. People who existed to counterbalance institutional hunger. Not heroes, maintenance. When systems grow too large, something steps in to loosen their grip. Calder may not have vanished. He may have finished his cycle. The leaf in the Bible. The handwriting that never aged. The way he spoke about time like a landscape. All signs of someone passing through history, not living inside it. There is one type of institution Calder never paid. Prisons. Never once. Some believe he saw them as honest. They did not pretend to be kind. They did not claim to save families by breaking them. Calder didn't fight visible cages. He fought the ones people thanked. In the 1940s, a strange rumor circulated in rural Oregon. A man helping families escape debt settlements. No names. No records. Always cash. Always calm. And always gone before anyone could thank him. One witness said, "He asked me if I remembered who I was before I needed permission to exist." The handwriting on one receipt survives. It matches. There is no grave for Elias Harlan Calder. No death notice. No final record. That alone is a kind of answer. America remembers its builders. It remembers its conquerors. It remembers its criminals. It does not remember those who quietly dismantle its habits. Because dismantling is not dramatic. It doesn't explode. It unfastens. Calder understood something most people never do. That control rarely arrives screaming. It arrives whispering. It says it wants to help. It says it wants to organize. It says it wants to protect children from their own blood. And when families accept that language long enough, they forget how to stand together without permission. Calder didn't fight governments. He didn't fight laws. He fought beliefs. The belief that families are dangerous when unsupervised. The belief that suffering can be inherited like property. The belief that institutions know people better than they know each other. He never tried to expose these ideas. He simply removed their fuel. Families. And when families disappeared from the system had nothing left to process. That's why he paid instead of protested. Payment speaks the language institutions respect. But freedom was always the real currency. Some say Calder vanished because he was caught. Others believe he stepped aside once the work was seated. There is a quieter possibility. That he is not gone at all. That he appears whenever ownership becomes too comfortable. Whenever people stop noticing the moment their lives are being negotiated. Look closely at history. Every so often, families slip through cracks that shouldn't exist. Debt erased without explanation. Children returned without paperwork. Institutions left empty without scandal. No headlines. No gratitude. Just absence. Calder once wrote, "The most complete freedom is the kind that does not know who to thank." If that's true, then maybe his greatest success is this. That you've never heard his name. Until now. And once you notice how often families are treated like problems to be solved, you may start to see the places where something, or someone, is still quietly undoing the locks. No applause. No witnesses. Just doors left open.